Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the Kinera Nanna 2.1 Z Tune edition, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank Linsoul Audio for providing the Kinera Nanna 2.1 Z Tune edition for review. Do greatly appreciate it, Linsoul Audio, you rock. Okay, so the Kinera Nanna 2.1 Z-Tune edition. This will set you back $950 from your bank account. It is a tribrid driver configuration. It has a 7mm dynamic driver for the bass, one Sonian BA for the mids, and two Sonian ESTs for the highs. Impedance is 60 ohms, sensitivity is 110 decibels, and it has a frequency range of 5 Hz to 50 kilohertz. Comes in a very large box. Got your Zeos logo up top and some specs on the back. Now let's be very clear here. I do want to specify very quickly, I have not heard any other Nanna variants, so I will not be making any comparisons to the original. Okay, so getting back to the unboxing, it opens up extremely slow. Take the lid off, and you're going to be greeted by quite a bit of stuff. You're going to get some paperwork that talks about the Nanna, and talks about the collaboration with Zeos and who he is and all kinds of other information that is inside there. Then you're going to get some information regarding the final Type E tips that are included. And you're also going to get more information regarding the Nanna. On the inside here, it looks like this. You get a carrying case, 2 sets of foams, your final Type E's, and then a couple of balanced terminations. You get a 4.4, and you also get a 2.5. And then you also get, on top of that, wait, there's more. You get a cleaning tool and 2 more pairs of tips. You get silicone tips with a blue stem. These are more of your standard kind of olive shape tip. They are a little bit on the wide bore side, which is nice. I like those tips quite a bit and use them quite a lot. We'll talk about tips in a moment. And then you also get tips that are a little bit more flat and are even wider bore. Now, a couple of things of note that were kind of a disappointment. Carrying case. It just feels cheap, especially for a $950 price tag. This feels like something that would come with like a $50 IEM. Kind of wish it's upped the game just a little bit when it came to the tips and to the carrying case. So getting back to the tips. Now the 4 different types of tips actually. You have the final Type E, the stock wide bore, and then the gray with stem and the foam. Foam tips I was not able to use at all. They were not comfortable whatsoever. They put a ton of pressure in my ears and it just was not comfortable after about a minute. So did not use foam tips whatsoever. As far as the others, the final Type E tip, I found that they made the overall sound very V-shaped. It had a lot of bass impact, and it really brightened up the upper mids and made the lower treble sound hot at times. It also was a very wide sound signature, and it sounded too wide at times, almost to the point of being in a very large open amphitheater. And it was just very airy, and it had a very overactive head-on swivel effect. It just felt like my head was going like this, trying to keep up with everything that was going on around me. And it just was, I couldn't really enjoy the music. With the stock black wide bore tip, I found that it had a more balanced presentation. It was still airy, and at times it could be a little too airy and a little bit too lean and thin sounding. It was extremely wide, and it had that large amphitheater sound, but it was not as distracting as it was with the final type E's, and I still had that overactive head on a swivel type of effect. And then with the gray stem wide bore tip, that was a slightly fun overbalanced presentation that added good bass impact and had a slightly elevated upper mids and crisp lower treble region. Had a good amount of air. It was a little bit more of an accurate stage, but you still had that little bit head on a swivel type of effect. That was actually my preferred tip most of the time, but I did alternate between the blue stem tip and the wide bore black stock tips. All right, let's talk about the actual IEMs themselves. So the Nanna Z Tune edition. I don't mind the look of them if I'm looking at this shell. If I'm looking at the shell with the Zeos logo, to me it just, I wish that the Zeos logo wasn't on the shell. It takes away from the beauty of the Nanna. The Nanna is a very pretty IEM. I can do with the Zeos logo elsewhere. Maybe put it on the split or put it on the box, on the case, things like that. But putting it on the shell just kind of takes away from the actual beauty. The cable. I like the cable, but I don't love the cable. To me, the cable is just okay. It feels like a normal type of rubberized cable. I wish that for this price point, it felt a little more premium. I wish that it had a little bit more, maybe a cloth type of feel to it. It didn't have this just rubbery type of feel. It does terminate into various ones, as I pointed out in the unboxing. Clicks with the mini XLR. Very nice touch. I do like the fact that you can connect it to any type of source depending on what termination you need. Cable connects with 2-pin, and I have no problems with the connection. Even though they are metal, they stay out of the way. The shells are a bit on the thick side. They're not the hugest things, but they have a nice long nozzle, a decent angle. But I do have an issue when I wear them. So when they go in my ears and they snug in, I have to wiggle around to get that wing to fit. And for whatever strange reason, it just doesn't quite match up with my ear. May work for yours, but for me, it does not. And these become uncomfortable after about half hour, 45 minutes. And it's just kind of weird how this part right here just doesn't quite fit. And it puts pressure right here on my ear and pulls down on that. And it just starts to hurt. Normally, I don't have too many issues with IEMs that have a wing. But this one, it just kind of doesn't fit my ear quite right. Overall though, they do a good job of isolating outside noises, and until they become uncomfortable, they're not too bad. I like the look of them. Very well designed. Just wish that wing was maybe either sticking out this way a little bit more or wasn't quite as protruding long. I don't know exactly what the issue is, but it just does not fit my ear very well. Sources to drive the Nanna Z tune. So the Nanna Z is actually rather source picky. I find that it can be powered by quite a bit of gear. Didn't really have any problems powering it, so to speak, on dongles, as long as I had a decent amount of power. Where I really struggled with though was in presentation. It was extremely picky. Things that were very analytical and cold did not sound good on the Nanna Z. Things that were very overly warm did not sound good on Nanna Z. It was just a kind of a hit or miss, and I just kind of struggled to really find something that sounded good. The things that I preferred it on, and it's a very limited list, I preferred it on the Next Drive Spectra X, and I preferred it on the Hifi R5 Gen 2 and also the Sony WM1A. The Nanna Z just didn't sound proper on a lot of devices. It sounded okay, it just didn't sound like it was being brought out to its full potential. And it just kind of lacked special sauce on a lot of things. Also songs, I found that it just was very picky on what type of genres of music it was being played on. I don't know, I just always was fiddling around with it. Either changing the tips from the gray blue stems to the black wide bore, or changing sources, or just flipping through my music. I could just never really become super content and just listen for a long time on one source with one tip. Before we get into the sonic impressions of the Kinera Nanna Z Tune edition, I'd like to thank my supporters through YouTube memberships and Patreon. Thank you very much for all that you provide to the channel. It is much appreciated. I do thank you taking the sacrifice from your personal finances to give to a channel to help it to grow and to provide gear to be purchased, to be reviewed, and to use at comparisons, and for gear to help produce the videos, and for coffee to help my brain function properly, which doesn't work anyways. But anyways, thank you very much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in supporting the Honest Audiophile, please check out the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there. And there's different ways that you can support the channel, whether it be through Patreon, YouTube memberships, or one-time gifts through PayPal or Venmo. So thank you very much in advance if you are considering becoming a supporter of the Honest Audiophile. If you haven't already, please check out the links down below for how you can follow the channel, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you'll know the next time a video is uploaded, and give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video. All right, so the Kinera Nanna Z edition. How do they sound? The Nanna Z, this has a very interesting type of sound signature. And when I say that, I mean it is dependent on what tips you're using, and also depending on what source you're using, what music you're listening to. But overall, the bass of the Nanna Z is rather energetic. It has a nice lot of mid bass presence and some sub bass presence. It's not overly present in the sub bass, but you do get a good amount of rumble and grumble down there when called upon. But it's mostly mid bass focused, and it has a lot of punch, a lot of slam, a lot of power when driven, and it really comes out with the gray blue stem tips and the final type E tip. With the wide bore tips, which I have on currently, it is a little bit more balanced presentation, but you still get that power. It has good tone. I like the tonality of it. It has good timbre. You can really follow instruments, and you can determine which one is which, and you can follow them through as they go along in a track. Detail retrieval is very good. It has an exceptional amount of detail, very high quality detail, and a lot of resolution. Overall, I like the bass, and it doesn't matter which tip, you're going to get some impact and slam and punch, just a different type of presentation. The mids of the Nanna Z are also a very natural sound. They have a bit of warmth to them, and the upper mids are slightly elevated, and at times, depending on what tip you can use, they can be a little bit borderline too much. And I found that to be especially true with the final type E's. With the wide bore black tip, I found that the mids were a little bit more balanced, but with the final type E's, that upper mids and lower treble region kind of came in to play a little bit more, and they became a little bit more aggressive. I found that with the gray blue tip, it added in a little bit of body in the lower end, and that they sounded a little bit more balanced and full. So just kind of depending on what type of presentation I was looking for. And I really did enjoy the mids of them. The tonality, again, was exceptional, and they have very good timbre. Detail retrieval, again, was top notch, and the resolution was very good. Treble. Now, the lower treble is a little bit elevated, and at times, depending on what tips you're using and what music, it can become a little bit hot. It has a little too much energy at times, especially with the final type E tips. I noticed this, and at times with the gray blue stems, it had a little bit of moments of this as well. But for the most part, it's a pretty well-controlled lower treble. And then the main treble and upper treble is very laid back. It's a very tame and mellow treble. It doesn't go boring. It has enough energy and sparkle to keep things going, but it has just a more chilled response to it. And so that plays well with, depending on what type of music you're listening to. If you listen to a lot of jazz, acoustical, and instrumental music, it'll sound more natural. If you're listening to some more like rock and those type of genres, you may wish that there was a little bit more sparkle and energy. Soundstage. Now, the soundstage of the Kinera Nanna Z is a interesting one. So it's a very wide stage. You have a lot of width to the stage, and it's almost too wide at times, and it can be a little bit distracting. Depth is not as deep as you would think. It has good depth, but it's not as deep as you would think considering how wide it is. And then overall, I find that the imaging is very good. It does extremely well following things across stage, and it's very precise and pinpointing accurate. But because you have so much going on, and you have a stage, it's like you're sitting on the front row of IMAX, or you're sitting inches away from an 80-inch TV, and you're watching a movie that's very action-packed and has a lot of things going on the stage or on the screen. And so your head is going like this. You're trying to keep up with everything going around, and you can get confused, and it's like all too much information all at once. And because you're so close, things will become a little bit muddled and jumbled at times within the stage, because the depth is not as deep as you would think. And because you're so close, it throws off your perceptions of depth. And so I find that that is more accentuated of an issue with the final type E tip, and it's not as much of an issue with the wide bore black stock tips and the gray blue stems. The wider bores do feel like they kind of balance that out and even it out a little bit and help in depth and help to slow the picture down, but you are still getting a ton of information. I found that the black stock wide bores were just a little bit more airy and felt a little bit not quite as much as the final type E's in the swivel head movements, but it was still kind of a issue at times depending on what type of music I was listening to. So I preferred the black wide bore stock tips with classical, acoustical, and jazz styles of music, and I preferred the gray blue stems with rock, metal, country, and those types of music, more vocal focused types of music. So overall, I like the Kinera Nanna Z. It's a fun, engaging listen, very detailed, very resolving, has good tone and timbre. I do find that the lower mids are lacking a little bit of body. You can help that depending on what type of source you're using and what tips that you throw on them. But overall, I like the Kinera Nanna Z. It's a very fun and engaging listen, and you can do all kinds of things with it. Change it up depending on what sources and tips you use. How does it compare to a couple other IEMs in its price point? And I found that, the Ray Penta from Meze. Now, the Meze Ray Penta has a little bit more comfort for me. It's not as uncomfortable. I also found that the Ray Penta was a more preferred sound. I found that the Ray Penta has a more natural and accurate tone and timbre. It's a little bit more full-bodied, has a little bit more of a impact and fullness to the bass, and is a more overall airy and sparkly energetic in the treble. And I just found it more engaging and pleasant. Soundstage wise is not as wide and is a more natural reproduction of stage sizes instead of trying to make everything wide as possible. So I actually prefer the Meze Ray Penta over the Kinera Nanna Z. And then the ADV M512D. Now the ADV M512D is going to be a brighter and more analytical leaning. It's going to be a little bit more clinical sound signature. And I found that the M512D is more detailed and better resolving, but at the same time, it's not as pleasurable to listen to. It does not have as much tone and timbre, and it is not as engaging and fun as the Nanna Z is. So the Nanna Z, I find that it is a good IEM. It's a little bit overpriced for what you get, in my opinion. It's a tough sell at $950 for me, but it may be for you. You may enjoy the sound, or you just want to hear a Zeos tuned IEM. But for me, I'm going to stick with the Ray Penta. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on the screen, subscription links, notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and also check out the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you can contact the channel, follow the channel, support the channel, all that kind of stuff down below. And last but not least, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.